Hola and welcome to a new episode of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show, episode number 88. My name is Julio Panisello. I am the dream alchemist at Roofless Painters, a free-range, nomadic art school, atelier and gallery, offering comprehensive art classes, international painting retreats, and private art events catered to every occasion and level. Hi, Julie. Oh my gosh. I am just gonna give the spiel, I guess, until everyone sort of like joins. With every episode, we reveal the theme of our next painting collection, so you can find out what we will be painting next and also the reasons why. We explained where the painting theme comes from and how it relates to our contemporary time. We explore different possibilities for visual representation of the concept that we're going to be using. And we do that using images of paintings throughout art history as inspiration while citing stylistic and historical references. So we just finished an incredible, fantastic, very beautiful painting collection. Black Values. We did portraits using a very limited color palette, and we learned so much, not only about the women that we painted, but also it was nice to tackle portraiture using a very limited palette. Yesterday, during our last session, we talked about portraits seem to be like the most challenging, which are not, but seem to be the most challenging subject matter. So tackling portraits with a monochromatic palette makes sense because it sort of like releases pressure of not having to deal with or think of skin tones, color matching, color of the hair, which color am I going to paint the clothes. So having just black and white and gray really facilitates, opens up the possibilities for exploration. But anyhow, so we're excited for our new painting collection. It's going to take us pretty much 2.5 weeks, because at the end of this month, we're going to travel to Italy. So, and Julie, it's going to be amazing. We're super excited, and we have a list of the locations that we're going to be proposing. But so we're going to paint a new collection of pieces based on the Japanese-American artist Isamu Noguchi. Isamu Noguchi was a very important 20th century artist who is known for sculptures and also furniture. But for whatever reason, in the past few weeks, not so much because May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I hope I just did it right. So we've seen a lot of artists and famous people that contributed to culture that have been featured during this month. We haven't so much heard about Noguchi this month, but we've been receiving sort of like messages from the universe. So, for example, going to a vintage store and all of a sudden seeing a Noguchi book, or just going to a flea market and just stumbling with a set of stamps that was published in 2006. I don't have it right here with me. Honoring Noguchi. So we just got a magazine by Leanne Ford, one of our favorite interior designers. And she has an entire section of her magazine dedicated to the Noguchi paper lamps. So we knew that we had to listen to those messages, because we know that nothing is entirely serendipitous. And we had to do something about it. And that's why we're proposing in the next few weeks to get inspired specifically by one body of work, Noguchi's paper lamps. So I'm going to read about his biography. I didn't know that he was born in Los Angeles, so that's another thing that started to kind of like make sense about perhaps there's some sort of like Noguchi ghost who's sort of like whispering in our ears. But yeah, he was born in Los Angeles, and then he moved to Japan when he was 2 years old. But anyhow, I'm just gonna read. There's a Noguchi museum in Long Island. There's also a few Noguchi sites in Los Angeles. And I'm gonna start with biography. Isamu Noguchi, he was born in 1904 and he died in 1988. And by the way, he was also part of there was a crossover between the abstract expressionists and Noguchi. He was there in New York at that time in the 50s. And there are some references about him befriending or being part of communities that we just read about. 9th Street Women. We just finished the book in a different book club. We're reading Romer Bearden's biography. He comes up in one of the organizations in Harlem that was created to expand a community of artists and support each other. He was one of the members, the founding members. So he was pretty much very present in a part of history in the US that was incredibly important, and yet we don't hear so much about his contributions. Anyhow, he was one of the 20th century's most important and critically acclaimed sculptors. Through a lifetime of artistic experimentation, he created sculptures, gardens, furniture, and lighting designs. And we're going to be focusing on his Akari series. We're going to be presenting photographs or curating a series of photographs of paper lamps. I'm just going to go ahead and put the inspiration because I could be talking about this for days. So this will be one of the images. And we're just going to paint paper lamps in honor to Noguchi. So hi, Darlene, and welcome. So that's what we're going to be doing. And I've been introducing Isamu Noguchi, famous artist, very important abstract expressionist, fundamental mid-century iconic architect. And he has a series of paper lamps titled Akari, and we are going to paint the different shapes. There's one right here. I'm just going to give you other examples, but we're going to be painting paper lamps, Noguchi's paper lamps, different table lamps. There's a whole series here. We thought it would be really fun to actually practice a still life of objects that have a bit of transparency, objects in which the light plays out, objects that have a clean look, maybe some clean backgrounds, objects that create different light effects because the light sort of like creates an illusion of form from the outside, but also from within. So not as simple, it looks easy, but we know that this is always challenging, but this will be the idea. And I was reading about his life when Noguchi's mother, Leonie Gilmore, met his father. She was a young writer, an editor living in New York City. She was the writer. Gilmore was a white American, mostly Irish descent, born in Brooklyn. His father, Yonejiro Noguchi, an itinerant Japanese poet, which sounds amazing, was Asian. Noguchi was born in Los Angeles, but moved to Japan with his mother at the age of 2 and lived there until the age of 13. In the summer of 1918, Noguchi returned alone to the United States to attend high school in Rolling Perry and then La Porte in Indiana. So anyhow, after high school, he moved to Connecticut to work briefly for the sculptor Gutzon Borglum, and then he moved to New York City to attend Columbia University. So while enrolled there as a pre-medical student, he also began taking evening sculpture classes on New York's Lower East Side with the sculptor Honorio Ruotolo. Anyhow, so in 1926, Noguchi, living in New York, studying in New York, taking sculpture classes in New York City, he saw an exhibition of the work of Brancusi, that profoundly changed his artistic direction. So much so that with a Guggenheim Fellowship that he acquired, or he was granted, or he won, Noguchi traveled to Paris. And in 1927, he worked in Brancusi's studio. So all these things we were not aware of. And again, this connection between, a lot of like artists at the time, contemporary artists of Noguchi, but we thought it was really beautiful. And if you think of Brancusi and sculpture, and if you think of Noguchi and also stone and the paper lanterns, there's a lot of stylistic parallels. So anyhow, he came back from New York City, and then he traveled extensively, and so it just goes a bit on and on. But I'm just going to focus, because I don't want to make it too long. I'm going to focus on the Akari paper lanterns, which is what we're going to be painting. And let me just sort of like bring another one. And by the way, this is him with his paper lanterns. And let me just read the Akari series and then talk a bit about how poetic and important and timely it is. And maybe it connects with a memory of the paper lanterns that you may have owned, or you may have had, or you may have loved, or you may have hated. Regardless, I'm just going to read that in 1940s, much later, Noguchi produced his first illuminated sculptures, lunars, having previously explored the idea of sculpting with light. I never thought that there was this backdrop with these paper lanterns. I remember going to art school and finding an apartment and trying to get the cheapest lights, because I just hated the apartment to be like bare, and I just needed to dress it up. And I just, I think I forgot which store, but the paper lantern always was a symbol that I associated with starving artists and not having enough money. When I'm reading about all this background and conceptual seeds, and it just feels like it was the opposite. So I went from not hating, but associating these lights with a past of scarcity, to appreciating these lights as being part of my exquisite good taste for anything artistic and profound. There, I just threw it out there. Anyhow, so his lunars demonstrate how the artist continued to draw upon surrealist-inspired biomorphic shapes, and were comprised of magnesite and light bulbs. In 1951, Noguchi expanded his basic formula to create his Akari works at the request of the mayor of Gifu, Japan. Now, Gifu, Japan still has the factory that in the early 1950s created the first series of his lamps. You can still buy Noguchi lights from the factory in Gifu, Japan today. They're not cheap, but they're made with the exact same materials. Handmade paper, I forgot the name of the paper, bamboo ribbing, and then the metal sort of like structure. They still manufacture the lamps that he designed today. So to modernize the local lantern designs, again, Noguchi united the traditional and the modern. The results have been both exhibited and mass-produced since 1955. Noguchi envisioned his Akari, which means, quote, light as illumination, end quote, as two sculptures, both the outward form of this sculpture itself and the resulting shapes created by emitted light, which this is something that I love, because his idea of like light as sculpture, it doesn't involve just the form of or the shape. It involves mostly the light within and also the effects of the light outside, which I think it's like extremely sophisticated. For Noguchi, light was another type of medium in which to work, one that challenged the ideas of materiality through its fundamental ethereality, and which radiated both the natural and industrial worlds. Just going to give you more examples of paper lanterns that we're going to paint. This is a photograph. I think it's a famous photograph. There was a Noguchi exhibition in New York City recently, I believe. I don't have much information, but we'll find out. And they just set up all the Noguchi lamps or lanterns or paper lamps in a room, and they just created this incredible space. And in Leanne's Ford's magazine that I mentioned earlier, this is one of the photos that illustrates the article that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. And thanks for joining us again. We are going to start a new painting collection. We finished an extraordinary, very productive, very good painting collection with black values, portraits, monochromatic portraits of famous women, black women. And we're going to change to a still life of Noguchi paper lamps. We're going to learn more. By the way, Noguchi was openly gay. I know that this is never part of the conversation in any of the design books that you're going to see. But it is important because representation matters. And although it was something that he kept private, he wasn't secret about it. And it was part of his identity. As so, race and other aspects, social justice was. So just wanted to mention that because it obviously and naturally, for reasons that we don't know, gets completely out of the conversation when talking about his life. In fact, I'm just going to mention another book. But first, let me just say that in Los Angeles, there are at least 3 Noguchi sites that we certainly are interested in. Let me see if I can open this. I don't know if I can open it, and I just have like 10 more minutes. We keep these presentations under 30 minutes. Oh, and by the way, yeah, like for example, this will be another of the images. And this is another Noguchi lamp, but it's an opportunity to move slightly forward from a monochromatic palette. From the painter's point of view, or from a painting point of view, using a lot of ecru, a lot of pastel notes, maybe playing with texture, but mostly to create this idea of roundness, of form with a neutral background. We believe that we could have a lot of fun painting still lifes of Noguchi lamps and also practice values without having a lot of details. Let me see if I can just find it. Yes, so I'm just going to mention the 3 sites in Los Angeles. California scenario, also known as the Noguchi Garden in Costa Mesa. Completed in 1982, this large-scale sculpture garden is located within the South Coast Plaza complex. I had no idea that there's a Noguchi sculpture garden next to this mall. So next time I'm going down to Orange County, I will certainly check it out. It is a landscape installation that reflects California's diverse geography and cultural heritage. Another site in or around Los Angeles, the Noguchi Plaza at the Japanese American Cultural and Community Center in downtown LA. We know the center. We had no idea that there's a Noguchi or a plaza named Noguchi Plaza that was designed by Noguchi. So there you go. We're just going to revisit our beloved city and discover these sites that became, I guess, invisible to us. So Noguchi designed the plaza, which serves as an outdoor gathering space for the cultural center and the surrounding community. The plaza features Noguchi's signature sculptural elements and reflects his design principles. And number 3, this is completely shocking, and in a million years you would never guess this site and location that Noguchi designed. And let me just point out, by the way, that hi Lois, I'm about to close this presentation, but we're extremely excited. I'm listing the 3 Isamu Noguchi sites. We're going to base the next collection on his paper lanterns. A famous monumental American artist. In the last week of the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we want to feature his work. We'll continue to paint this beyond May and right before we go to Italy. But the 3rd location around us, designed by Noguchi, who was born in Los Angeles. And by the way, he came back to LA many times, and he had a really close relationship with the city. We're talking about somebody who was born in 1904, moved to Japan, moved to New York, went to Europe, but then also lived in Los Angeles throughout his life. The 3rd one is the Queen Mary Art Center. Noguchi was commissioned to design a sculptural landscape for the Queen Mary ship, which is permanently docked in Long Beach. His design integrated sculptural elements with the ship's surroundings, creating an engaging and immersive experience for visitors. Did I know that there was a Noguchi design garden? A Noguchi design garden by the Queen Mary? I haven't been to the Queen Mary in literal decades. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3 stops for sure to check this amazing legacy of Isamu Noguchi. And we already, by the way, this is a very iconic photograph of Isamu Noguchi. But we already purchased 2 books for this series. I had no Isamu Noguchi books, although I've been seeing them, and just now putting it on my list. I don't see the title of this book, but this is one of the books. I just bought them on eBay, but then this is the other book. They were rated top best Isamu Noguchi books on Goodreads, which we have a profile and we have a Ruthless Painter's Shelf, and we encourage you to follow us on Goodreads. And this was the best rated Noguchi books, so we're gonna start with those. And if you have a local library nearby, check if they have an Isamu Noguchi shelf, because most likely there are going to be some incredible out-of-print books that will give you a much more a better idea of or actually present the long legacy and influence that he left behind. By the way, speaking of how we've been sort of like somebody has been whispering in our ears Noguchi's name for the past month and a half, we are reading, just going to put this away, but anyhow, so we're reading on our book club An American Odyssey. It's a biography of Romare Bearden. It's an amazing account of the 1940s and 50s and beyond, of the cultural happenings that were going on in Harlem, but also in New York City. We also got a different catalog that it's out of print. Romare Bearden by Myron Schwartzman. An incredible book. And I'm reading that book, and we're reading this book also. And in 1935, this is, again, another example, and I'm going to close in 4 minutes, I promise. So in May of 1935, and throughout the summer, discussions were held by a group of artists intent on forming an artists' congress. The congress was named American Artists Congress, and this happened in Harlem in the 1930s. Stuart Davis, who would later become Romare Bearden's mentor and friend, became executive secretary of the group, which grew from 20 to 56 artists by August. During this time, various drafts of a call for the American Artists Congress were written. The final manifesto was hammered out by a committee, including Davis, Aaron Douglas, one of the most famous Harlem Renaissance and American artists at the time, the presiding black artists of the elder generation, Hugo Gallard and Ben Shawn. So the planning committee met regularly at the American Contemporary Artists Galleries, the ACA, and then it says among the 379 artists from various mediums who signed the call, they were, the list goes on, very famous Milton Avery, Berenice Abbott, Byron Brown, Paul Berlin, Alexander Calder, Stuart Davis, Aaron Douglas. Guess who else was part of this? Isamu Noguchi. So, out of the blue for us, we're reading about Romare Bearden. We're reading the biography. We have like this other book like supporting the biography and kind of like going over. And all of a sudden we realize that Isamu was part of the Harlem Renaissance. He was friends with Romare Bearden. He was friends with the de Koonings. So Noguchi was a protagonist. He wasn't just a little artist that created paper lamps and furniture. He was a major player in the development of the contemporary and modern art world that was pivoting from Europe to America, and it started in the late 30s, continued in the 40s, and then even later. But I think that's it. I'm excited that we're going to be doing this. Thank you for watching this presentation. I hope it wasn't too discombobulated. Please Google Isamu Noguchi. Check out the sites that we mentioned in this presentation. Go visit them. Join our painting sessions. We provide so many opportunities right now to join in so many locations in person. We've been having a lot of fun, and also it feels good to get back to our pre-COVID sort of like routine. So please join one of our painting sessions. We're going to post more for next week and all the way until we leave for Italy. But we're going to be painting Noguchi's paper lamps in hopes that we appreciate more of his work, his legacy, his importance, his influence, his conceptual, poetic background in creating these pieces, and also the fact that there is a Noguchi Renaissance, or maybe there's been a Noguchi Renaissance for years and we're just catching on because we're seeing so many references of him everywhere, in magazines, in articles, in books. So, it's one of those things that, it doesn't become visible until you hear about it, and all of a sudden it seems like it's everywhere. That's where we are right now. So maybe the Noguchi Renaissance has been going on for a while, but if this presentation makes you be aware of anything Noguchi around us, then we'll be super happy. So thank you again, and we'll see you in painting in the next few days.